Welcome to episode 2 of thedad77. Just some brief background of who I am. My name is Kerry Briggs. I have grown up in northern Illinois and spent most of my childhood up until second year of college, and then I transferred to a college in Indiana, which is now called Huntington University. And I started working in campus life while at Huntington, and worked 2 years after I graduated from college. I graduated with a BA in Bible and Religion. After 2 years of working with campus life, I then had a job that just was out there to help people. Then I went to Ohio and became a paramedic, worked for a private ambulance company. Then I got hired on to a fire department, spent 25 years on the fire department, and so I've done EMS, and for 38 years I did firefighting for 25 years and then retired. About not quite the middle of my career for the fire department, I went back to school. I became a physician assistant, and I worked in emergency room and did 21 years in emergency room. And then this last year I moved to urgent care. So that's a little bit of my background. The idea of this podcast, The Dad, is that, number one, I'm a dad. Been around a while, so at some points we're going to talk about dad stuff, I call it, of just various things that pop up and from time to time, and we'll just expound on that situation, whatever it might be. The main focus, though, is going to be more of a Bible study, and we're going to look at words, passages, however the Lord leads, and take a look even into the Hebrew and Greek and the meanings that they had when it was written versus us here today. And sometimes there's a big difference in all of that. So episode 1, we started to talk about healing, being healed, made well, those concepts, and we looked at the word soterion, which is a Greek word with a meaning of not just being healed, but also a salvation delivery, with the concept mostly of being saved from a dirty disease into wholeness and wellness. And we looked at that at length, and we talked about the 10 lepers, and we talked about the woman who had issue of blood, and how they both were awful diseases back then, and they just didn't know how to deal with it, and so they were considered unclean. So this word that was used in their examples had to do with that disease and considered unclean, dirty, and how they were saved from that, healed from that kind of thing. So episode 2 here today, we're going to look at a couple other words depending on how far we go. Try to keep these to 30 minutes in length. It's kind of hard once you start doing this because there's a lot of information, and then we also eventually will get to application of this. So the reason kind of deal about and talk about healing and being healed. I grew up in a very evangelical church that what took place in the first century New Testament, the new church, was considered the first century church. And after that, we didn't need that. And I always kind of scratched my head and wondered about that. How and why is that possible? And as you mature and you learn other things in that, I've since learned a long time ago that that is not a true teaching. That the Bible says that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and that He has the best for us. Well, if the best for us is not having cancer, the best for us is not having heart problems, the best for us is not having high blood pressure, etc. You can go on through all those diseases. That's not the best that God has for us. We're stuck in that because of the world that we live in being a imperfect and fallen world. But I think that it's very legitimate to look at healing because it happens today. It happens today based on faith, and it happens a lot in other countries because they don't have everything handed to them. They don't have what we have. And people tend to rely on other entities than just simply relying on God. So that's one of the purposes of looking at healing and that. So the word that we're going to look at today, by the way, I use 3 basic references for these episodes here initially. One is when I talk about or read New Testament, it's going to be out of the New American Standard Bible. It is the closest translation to the Greek, but if you look at the actual Greek and the words, it makes sense in the Greek the way they say their words, but it doesn't really make sense in English. The words and sentences are all broken up and kind of backwards when you look at it in English. So the word that we're going to look at today, and I'm also using the Interlinear Bible, which has Hebrew, Greek, and English, and that then looks at, it has the English, it has the Greek or Hebrew equivalent, all in the same sentence, one above the other in that. It also has a reference number to every Greek word that you then can go to the Strong's Concordance, which I use, and that reference number then goes to that specific Greek word and shows you the definition. It shows you how the word's used, and it gives you insight into the actual Greek meaning of the word, which is what we're doing here today. So the next word that we're going to look at is iamia. And as I said in the first episode, I apologize to my Greek friends for the pronunciation of the words, because I'm pretty much awful at sounding out words and doing that, but it's what we got. It will give them a nice laugh when they listen to this. So this Greek word is actually a verb: to cure, to heal, to make well. The first verse that we're going to look at is Matthew 8:13 is where that word is. But the whole story, I want to go. This is the story of the centurion and his faith. If you've not been around Christianity long, or I'm just going to review this story. So Jesus is going from point A to point B, and a centurion from the Roman army comes up to him, and he says, "Lord, my servant is laying paralyzed at home, and he's in terrible torment." We don't know what happened to him. We don't know if he fell, got run over by the oxen, or what happened. But he was obviously in bed. He was in a lot of pain, and he was paralyzed. And Jesus says, "Oh, I will come and heal him." But then the centurion says to Jesus, "No, I'm not worthy of you to come into my house." And that was a Jewish and Gentile kind of thing, where Jews were not supposed to interact with Gentiles. In other words, they wouldn't normally go to a Gentile and say, "Hey, come on over, we're having a barbecue, come and hang out." They tried to keep separate as much as possible. So the centurion, who, they occupied Jerusalem and the Holy Land at that time, they're well aware of this tradition, this fact of life in the Jewish community. So the centurion says, no, I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. So a Jew wouldn't go to their house and eat or do anything either. "I'm not worthy of you to come. I'm a person I'm a centurion. I'm in authority. I say to this person, go do that, and he does it. I say to this person, go do something else, and they do that." And he goes, "So all I know is if you say the word, it'll be done, that you don't need to come." And Jesus is actually very amazed, and I can just, if you try and picture it, he's like, his response is, truly, I've not seen this kind of faith in all of Israel. So here you have a Gentile who Jesus is telling everyone, "Look, this dude's got more faith than any of you when it comes to me and what I'm about and what I'm doing." So then Jesus expounds on that a little bit, and then he says, "Go, it'll be done to you as your faith is." And so the centurion goes to his house, and when he gets there, they're like, "Oh, he's all fine, he's good, well, when did it happen?" And it happened in the same hour as they interacted. So that word then is used in there. It's also, if you go to Luke 7:7, Luke, who is the physician of them all, uses the same word as Matthew did here, which is interesting because you would think, him being a physician, that he would use that word or concept probably more than any of the other words, but he didn't. We looked last episode 1, where he used a totally different word. He used the word soterion versus the mia word. So Matthew and Luke both use that same Greek word, to cure. If you go to Luke, and we are going to go to Luke. If we go to Luke 6, computer's a little slow today, 18 and 19. Jesus just chose the 12 disciples, and he had come down from a place. Usually Jesus would go away, like up in the mountains, to be alone and pray, and that. So they just came down from there, and there was a large crowd waiting for Jesus to come back down, and they came to hear him. They came to be healed of their diseases, and there were many that were demon possessed, and the people were trying to touch him because they felt that the power coming out of him, and it says he healed them all. So again, the word is a verb, so it's an active that they were actually the whole crowd, which is interesting because it wasn't like, gee, I healed quite a few or whatever. It says that they healed them all, which is interesting today, because today we like to go, oh, well, I guess God just doesn't want me healed. No, really, God does want you healed, but it requires your faith to be sparked to where you actually have the faith of God to that, yeah, that's what he wants, and God will do that. So if we look in Luke 9, this was another episode where Jesus, Luke 9:42, Jesus came, and he was apparently off by himself again, and he comes down to his disciples, and this father, he comes down, hey, what's going on? And this father's like, hey, I brought my son to him. He has this demon. He's possessed. The demon's trying to kill him. He throws him in a fire. He tries to drown him. So I brought him to your disciples so that they could heal him, and they couldn't do it. Can you help? And so Jesus just looks at everyone around and says, you unbelieving and you perverse generation, how long will I be with you and put up with you? That is in verse 41. And then he says, bring him here. And as he approached with the kid, the demon slammed the boy to the ground and threw him into convulsions. And Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, and healed the boy. That's the word that's used here, is again the action, to heal. Then if you look also in Luke 22, and 51. This is where Jesus is up at the Mount of Olives, and he's praying. He's just went through that difficult time of praying to God, saying, can this be taken from me, but not my will, yours be done. And so he comes down to the disciples, and here comes all the guards of the priests come to try and arrest him. Well, Peter always acts before he thinks. We're a lot like that too. Many times we do the exact same thing. So we're not getting down on Peter, because we're a lot of Peter in us. So he grabs a sword and he actually cuts the one guard's ear off. And Jesus kind of rebukes him and says, Peter, stop this. No more of this. And he picks up the ear and puts it back on the person and heals the ear onto him. So this is also repeated in John 5:3. And the same word is used there. Interesting enough, in Acts 8:8, so Philip, who is in Samaria, and that, and there was a large crowd again, and Philip was performing a lot of miracles, a lot of healings, signs and wonders, and unclean spirits were coming out with a shout, and paralyzed people were healed, people with lame and unable to walk right and correctly were healed. And again, this is that word that is used. Matthew 13:15 is a little bit of a twist on that word. It's obviously still using that word, but this is Isaiah's prophecy that is repeated, that talks about that people would see and hear, but not hear, not see. But if they did see and hear, then God would return and heal them. That's the same word that is used in that passage, as well as Acts 28:24, when it's talking about Jesus, and it goes into this long thing about Jesus, and it's the phrase that's the most important there is, by Jesus's wounds we were healed. So when you're talking about Jesus on the earth and healing people, and the disciples healing people and that, but then when Jesus went through all the suffering that he did, the whip of 9 tails on his back and being beat up and the thorns, all that was done, and that's what pays for our healing. So if that's what Jesus did to secure our healing, then I'm pretty sure that he didn't just mean that for the first century church. He didn't go through that for just century number 1. He knew that there were going to be many centuries after that, many decades, many eras, however you want to put it, after that, and that we too will be healed by his stripes that he already paid for us. So this is a different look at one of the words. The first one was healing, that had to do with a salvation from a disease to a healed, a whole state. And this one has to do more with the actual verb of that the people, as they were speaking, the people were healed. Jesus touched them, they touched him, and they were healed. It's that verb of healing that's indicated. We are about 25 minutes into this episode number 2, and we're at a point where I think we're going to stop because the next word is even larger. It's the word that's used the most, and I think that we'll never get it through in the 5 minutes that are left. But so the concept of that we've looked at already in episode 1 was that concept of being saved and healed. The concept today is the actual verb that people were healed, and there were many examples of people who the writers used this word. So the next episode, which is episode 3, then we're going to look at a whole other word, and this episode 3 is a word that is used the most in the New Testament to describe healing, and so that's going to be quite a lengthy discussion. So I hope you're getting something out of this. Again, look for episode 3 coming up. Share this with friends, neighbors, and like and follow this podcast. And there will be more to come on healing, but we will also take a look at many other words and passages of Scripture. You all have a good day. That's my Southern.